Alright, what's up guys? This is the Game Dev Hub. This is our Python beginner series. And we're going to continue on from where we left off last time. We were talking about variables, functions, and variable types and that kind of thing. I'm going to talk about something called flow control, better known as if statements, for, while, etc. And I'm going to show you how those work and why we use them. But before, I want to just go over some stuff from the previous video that may not have been entirely clear. And I noticed that in the previous video, the type or the text may have been a little too small to read. I figure even though on my screen it looks fine, it may not be on smaller resolutions. So make that nice and big. Okay, so here's our code from the original, from the first video. So just for review, we have a function here, then we're setting this variable equal to the return value of said function, which is yname, which is your input. Again, if you're not following with this, go watch the previous video or drop us a comment. But we had an issue in the previous video where if I had this up here, it wouldn't work. And the reason for that, and I didn't really get into it, is because you have to declare the function first before you can call it. What I was doing is I was trying to call the function up here, but I hadn't declared it yet. So when it tries to call it, Python doesn't know what the hell we're talking about because it's down here. So all I have to do, and I don't even have to declare it up here, I can just do it in one step, declare down here. And when I run this code, it'll be the same, it'll work the same way it did before. Type in my name, which would be, let's try the Game Dev Hub. Below the Game Dev Hub, and I print name. Same thing. So we're good. So I just wanted to go over that from the previous video and make sure that we were clear on that. And now we're going to move on to flow control. So why is it called flow control? Well, it basically is like a gated system. It lets you check for certain requirements before that code is executed. So what do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, using the same method we were using before, I want the user to give me let's do a number guessing game. Let's say I pick a number and I want the user to guess it. So I'm going to set my secret number, and this is a chance to go over naming convention for variables. There's different ways to name your variables. It's not enforced by the language itself, but it just makes it a lot easier to read for other people that may look at your code. So for example, here I'm using what's called Camelback. So you start your first word lowercase, and then every word after that, no space. Remember, you can't have spaces in your variable names. But I use a capital number. So if I do secret number 1, you notice every word that follows will be capitalized. Another common way is to use underscores. Secret number. That's perfectly acceptable. And then we have a certain kind called constants. And constants in Python is well, in general, just a variable that you don't want to change, and a common convention for that is to use all caps, which means you can't use Camelback, you have to use the underscore, but you use all capital letters, so secret number. So if another person looks at your code and they happen to know this convention, which is fairly common, they know they wouldn't change this value at all. And then, in some languages you have, like in C++, you declare a constant as such, and you can't change it anyway, but through the program, but it's still good to use the convention. So here we're I'll leave it like that just so we get some practice. So secret number is equal to 5. That's the number we want the user to guess. Now obviously we're writing the code, so we know that it's 5, but the user, or the player in this case, because it is a game, will not know what that number is. They're not looking at the code, they'll only be looking at the output here. So we'll start off with asking them for numbers. So we're going to call their guess. Is what we're going to call it. It's going to be equal to raw input. If you remember from last video, raw input takes their input and it gives them a prompt, and then it saves it to that variable. So for example, guess a number between 1 and 10. Alright. And then we want to give them a message whether they guessed it or not. So this is where flow control comes in. And actually, this is going to give us an error, by the way. I'm just letting you know up ahead of time. We'll go over that in a second, but let me show you flow control. So we want to check something. We want to make sure that they actually guessed the right number. So how will we do that? Well, there's one way to do it. We can use an if statement. And an if statement basically checks if something is true. So if and then whatever is inside of the parentheses is what we're going to compare. So in this case we want to say if the guess, so whatever they gave us, we don't know what it is equal to secret number, that means it's true. Let's say, I'm going to write this. There's some errors in this code already, which is fine. I want to run into these errors so that I can explain to you later on. So I'm going to keep writing this. So if guess is equal to secret number, alright, and then we start a block here. So it's going to execute everything inside this block. So in this case, if the guess is the same, then we know it is correct. So we're going to print, I don't even know if you need the parentheses. I use them anyway. It's habit from other languages. But let's try it without. Let's see what happens. You can always correct it. Print correct. And there's something called a special character, an escape character, which is a backslash or front slash. I'm not sure what you call it. It's this slash right here. And N. And what that stands for is new line. So it's going to make a space after that when it prints it out. It's just to keep things nice and tidy. Alright. So I'm going to run this and we'll go over and fix the errors we have so far. So first we have, and you notice idle threw up an error. It says there's a syntax error. It doesn't tell us what it is, but it highlights it. So right off the bat we have this problem right here. So we're saying if it's equal, well, we're using the equal as an assignment operator here. Operators are just symbols that do certain things in the language, or in the scripting language. So equals means that something will be set to the value of something else. There's the plus operator, minus, division, multiplication, and some other ones that we won't get into. This one is not what we're looking for, because this will be saying if we're setting guess equal to secret number. That's not what we want. We want to compare these. So this is a little, just something to remember, and this is for most, at least any programming language that I know, you use double equals. This means comparison, so we're comparing if this is equal to this, as opposed to the assignment operator, which is the single equal sign. I hope that's clear. Sometimes it's a little hard to understand, but in this case, if we want to compare two things, use double equals. If we want to assign something to something else, use single. Alrighty, so first error is fixed. Let's run the second one. So I'm going to guess a number. I'm going to say 2, or 3, or 2. Cool. So nothing happened because we got the wrong number, but let's say we guessed the right number in theory. I say 5, but still nothing. So what happened? Well, let me print guess, and you'll see. Is that correct? Yeah. So, wait, hold on a second. I don't know how to print type. Let me check something. I want to be able to print the type so I can show you something. I just can't remember what the command is here, so we'll go to our good friend Google.com, print type, oops, Python print type. Check these two. One of these will tell us the answer. Print type. Okay, so we just do it like that. Just type, I guess. Oh, we want to print it though. Alright, cool. Whoops. Print. Okay, so we print type and then the variable, so guess. So it's a string. And that's the reason it's never going to check out as true. It's just weird that it didn't give me the quotations, which is why I was confused. But it's of a type string. So remember from the previous video, the string 5 is not equal. This is a not equals operator, by the way, which is an exclamation mark and equals, is not equal to 5, the integer. So these will never check out as true no matter what we do. So what can we do to fix this? Well, again, from the previous video we can cast, we know that we can cast this to an integer. So we're going to set this guess equals to int, and that's how we cast an integer. We showed you float and string before. So now we're going to get the int value of whatever string we give the as input. So we'll save it. Cool. I'll pick a number. I'll pick 5. And correct. It matches. Go to print 5. Again, it's if I do type. Oops, not print 5. It's stupid. Print guess. And then I do type guess. fifths of an int. Now it can make that comparison. But what happens if we don't give it a number? What if I say my number is s? Oh, now there's an error. It cannot implicitly convert a string to an integer. So you got to be careful with that. We're not going to go over into how exactly you deal with that just yet, but it's just something to keep in mind. I'm just showing you this for the purpose of making sure you understand the difference between integer and string and how they work or don't work together. Alrighty. So now, if they don't make the right answer, we don't really tell them anything. We just, nothing happens. So here, if I put in a value of 4, nothing happens. It doesn't tell me anything. So I want to be able to tell the user or the player that, their guess is incorrect. And the way we do that is we start a new block, which is called else. And else doesn't take any, you don't have to say else something, it's just else. If anything else happens, it doesn't matter what else it is. As long as it's not 5, if something else other than 5 is what they input, then execute the following command. So we're going to print incorrect. Right? And then we'll run this again. So if I do 4, or 3, sorry, incorrect. If I run the program again, 5, correct. Awesome. But let's say I did want to give some conditions to this. So I want to check if, for example, if the number is 5 and they picked 4 or 6, which is very close, then I want it to say, oh, you were close. So how would I do that? So here, instead of using else, there's something called elif. Now elif is not a made-up word, it's actually like short for else if, which doesn't work in Python. It's elif. And then in this case you're able to give it to like a comparison. So you want to check something. So you say if guess is equal to 3, or sorry, 4, then we want to print close. You were close, right? I could do another elif and check for if it was 6, but instead I will show you another technique, which is to use an or statement. So if you want to check if this is true or that is true, then do this. So for example, if it's 4 or 6, so I use or. In Python it's very simple, it's just or. Or the guess is equal to 6, then you print that. Otherwise, if neither of those is true, so if it's not the right number, it's not 4, and it's not 6, so anything else other than those, then we say print incorrect. Let me capitalize that. Incorrect. Cool. We run it. I say 4. Oh, you were close. Let's pick 6. You were close again. Pick 1. Incorrect. Print 5, or we'll put in 5, which is correct. Awesome. So our code works. It's a nice, simple little game where you pick a number. But how can we make this a little more interesting? So, for example, we don't ever want to hard code anything. What I mean by that is you don't ever want to use absolute values, right? So if I ever change this to 6, for example, 6 wouldn't actually be close, it would be correct. And 4 wouldn't be one less. So we can use actual operations here. For example, if it's secret number minus 1, which is the number before the secret number, or we do secret number, secret number plus 1, so the number after it, we're saying the same thing. The secret number minus 1, so 5 minus 1 is 4, and plus 1 is 6. So we're saying the same thing. So if I put in for my answer 4, you were close. Put in for my answer 6, you were close. If I put in 5, correct. So far so good. So I'm not hard coding anything except for the actual answer. So let's say I change it up just so you know that it's actually working. If I do 8, okay, and I put in 7, you were close again. So if I put 8, correct. So we know the code is working because we can change the secret number and it still works. But we want to do a couple more checks. For example, what if I do this? If I say 5,000? Well, incorrect, but I just asked for a number between 1 and 10. how do I check that? Well, I can do an if statement that occurs first, before anything else, and wrap everything else inside of it. So I would do this. I would say if. So the first thing I want to check is if my secret number, or sorry, if the guess is more than 0, in other words, it's 1 or above, and guess is less, let me use some space, I may know about that. Okay, so if the guess is more than 0, that means more than 1 or above, and it's less than 11, meaning 10 and less, but more than 1, or more than 0, then it's a valid answer, because it's between 1 and 10, which is what I'm asking for. So you want to make sure, again, indentation. This whole segment now belongs to this if statement. The way we reflect that is by tabbing everything underneath it. So now you see this, if this is true, it will run everything in here. So if this is true, it goes on to check the guess. Otherwise, it's not going to do anything. So because I haven't set up any other conditions. So if I give it a number like 5,000 now, nothing happens. But if I give it a number like 8, it's correct. It actually went through and checked, and found my number was the right one, and then it was all good. But so now we do another else. So else, if it was anything other than a correct answer, then we say print, and I guess you don't need the parentheses because this has been working, so no parentheses. Then you want to say the parentheses I think you use when you concatenate, like we were doing earlier, where you were taking text and a variable. But so let's say print. So you let's do that actually. So guess plus is not a valid answer. Please try again. Right now it doesn't actually let you try again because it just ends the code, but we'll get to that in a second. Alright, cool. So I pick 18. Whoops. Oh, okay, I need to make sure again, types. You can't concatenate, which is what I'm doing here, when you're adding text to another variable. It has to be a string, so I just cast it real quick. It has to be a string and a string. So I cast my guess to a string. Again, I'm not changing the original value. I'm just casting it for this particular function. So 18. 18 is not a valid answer. Please try again. Now, how do we get it to let you try again? Because we want to, we want it to actually keep asking you until you get it right, and that's how you win the game. Otherwise, it just ends, and you have to run the code again, and that's cumbersome. So, how will we do that? So I'm going to introduce a new type of flow control, which is called while. And while actually does exactly what it sounds like. While something, it'll keep doing everything inside of it. So let me explain. Let me indent here real quick, which is format. Okay, indent region. Here's a hotkey. So again, while. So it's going to execute everything inside this while loop. It's called a loop, by the way. As long as this condition is true or not true or whatever you tell it. And this is where it gets a little tricky. So let me start off by, let me go one step at a time. So we want to check that while guess, how would I do this? So I want to declare guess, let's see, I want to make a new kind of variable here. I'm trying to find an easy way to do this. Okay, we'll set a condition here called win, or won. So this is going to check whether or not you won, and this is a new type of variable that I didn't cover before. It's called a Boolean operator, or sorry, Boolean variable. So all it has is a true or false statement. It's all it is. It'll either return true or false, which is the same as either 0 is false, and then 1 or anything else other than 0 would evaluate as true. So it's just those two values, but we want to check if you won. So if you won, that means true. Right now I actually want it to be false. So you haven't won yet. So while 1 is equal to false, so as long as you have not won, and again, you want to compare, so you use a comparison operator, not the single one. So as long as you haven't won, so this is true, you haven't won. even though 1 is equal to false, the fact that you haven't won is true. This is where it gets tricky, right? This is in essence checking if this whole statement is true or false. So, have you won? No, so that's true. You haven't won. It's true that you have not won. If you had won, then this would no longer be true because you have won, so that's false. A little tricky there, but you're going to have to just kind of wrap your head around that one. There's no way that I can think that's any better to explain it. So we'll run this code. So as long as you haven't won, so while 1 equals false, it'll run this code. And eventually we want to break out of it, because if I do this, it's actually going to run forever because I'm not ever changing the value of 1. So if I do 8, even though I won, holy shit, it's running forever. And that's what you call an infinite loop, which is very bad. And there's a way to stop the code. Hold on. I can't remember. I think it's Control C. Yeah, Control C. Okay, so infinite loops will cause your program to crash. You do not want that. That's one of the worst things you could do, which is an infinite loop. Well, maybe not one of the worst, but pretty bad. So at some point we want to break out of that loop. So how do we do that? Well, we make this statement no longer true. How we do that? How do we do that? Is by, when you guess it, correct. So we set 1 equal single because we're assigning it. We set it to true. So now let's run it again. If I do 4, incorrect. It's gonna run forever. Hold on. Let me just demonstrate the first point that I was trying to make before I get into the next one. So if I set equal to 8, correct, it ends. That's it. Program over, you won. The other problem is it's just going through and executing this code, but it's never asking you for the correct input again, right? So you actually have to move this. So I'm going to cut it. Control X is what I did there, and Control V to paste. You can just do edit cut or copy and paste. So the first thing this program is always going to do, it's going to ask you for an input. So that will fix the problem we just had. So if you guess a number between 1 and 10, let's say 4, incorrect. Guess a number between 1 and 10. 5, nope. 6, nope. 7, oh, I'm close. 8, boom, I won. And then it ends. Pretty cool, right? So now we have a working game. It has a simple rule, which is guess a number. It's a fake number. It's a set number. But it's a game nonetheless. It has some rules, and you can win, you can lose. So how do we make this a little more interesting? We can change the number up every single time. So here we get into one more concept that I'm going to introduce in this video, and that's it, which is the concept of importing. So you have a keyword in Python which is called import, and you see here that I'm importing random. So what exactly does that mean? Well, there's functionality that's built into Python that's they're called libraries. And Python has a whole set of libraries that you can use, and they basically include code that do a number of things. They're not all included by default, because if you don't need them, there's no reason for your program to require all these. That would make it much more cumbersome and really inefficient. So in this case, only import stuff that you need. And there's no easy way, really, besides reading the documentation, to learn all the different libraries that you need to know. It's just as if, again, Google's going to be your friend. If you ever need to do something, you can't think of it, search for it. Search for Google. How do I do this? And then chances are somebody's written a library. But random happens to be a library that already exists inside of a Python. So all you have to do is import it, which is cool. So I import random. And this library again has a set of functions. The only thing you need to know is what you need to give it as a parameter. You don't really care about how it works unless you really want to find out. You can go ahead and read the documentation. But I'll show you how this works. So we have random now. I'm going to use this to generate a random number. So I'm going to set my random number here. Instead of using 8, I'm going to set it to, and again, this is why it was important earlier to not hard code that number for the win. Because if I'm changing this number constantly, randomly, or semi-randomly, pseudo-random, then it wouldn't have been true if I had set this to 4 and 6 anymore. So, good thing. So whatever the number ends up being, it's always going to check one less or one more. So the way you do that is random, or sorry, it's how does it go? It's random. So you always start off, when you're using something out of a library, you want to start off with the name of the library, random, and then a dot. The dot operator means that you're using something inside of it. And we're not going to get too heavily into this until we get into classes, but for now just trust me on it. So random.rand range, and then random.rand range is going to give us a number, and it's going to ask us for two parameters. You notice that if I leave my cursor here, it's going to tell us a couple things. So it's well, actually this is one of the many overloaded ways to do it, so I'm just going to show you exactly how to do this. The range is going to take a number between x and y. So in this case we want a number between 1 and 11. Okay, and let me make sure I haven't messed this up. So print secret number. Whoops. That's not gonna work. Well, if I win it, I guess I can. Well, let's try playing the game. We'll find out how it works. So I'm try 1. Incorrect. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. 2. Print secret number 4. Alright, so the secret number ended up being 4. I'm going to run this code again and crash it. Okay. Print. I'm crashing it on purpose just so I can print this. Secret number 1. So you notice it's a different number every time, which is cool. We don't have to generate the number ourselves. This random range is doing it. But you may be wondering why I did 1 to 11 if we're actually trying to get from 1 to 10. Well, the reason is because random range includes the first number but does not include the last number. It goes up to but not including the last number. So it's going to go from 1 to 11, not including 11. So that means 1 to 10. It's just one of those odd things about how it was set up. I honestly don't know the reason, but just know that that's the way it's set up so that you remember how to do it. And again, you can, if you're ever in any doubt as to how this works, remember also, this is a very broad overview of basic concepts. So I showed you the wild if, I showed you how to import a library, which we'll get into more detail later on. So it's okay if you're confused at this point, but the important thing is that you're able to get this code to work, and you more or less understand the concepts I'm trying to go over here. The specifics on syntax is something you can learn as we go along. So back to Python random, and then we just so happen to find the random documentation. Now this may all seem like gibberish to you at the moment, but we're trying to find rand range. Random.rand range, and what we did here is a start to stop. So basically it's a number from where we want to start to where we end. And what I'm seeing here is actually interesting. Hold on. Because if I remember correctly, it doesn't include number, but the notation here tells me that it does include both. So let me try something. I'm going to write a new script, actually. And we're going to find out exactly what numbers random is giving us. So, so let me run this through and let me start a new file here. And we'll see what happens. So the first thing I want to do is, if I were in person here with you, I would ask you what that is if we want to get random numbers. But since you're not, I'm just going to tell you. Duh. Imports random. First thing you always want to do is import your libraries in any program, if you have any. And then we're going to set a random number equal to random. We're trying to use rand range. And we're going to give it 1 and 10. And this is actually going to help us. This is random numbers. Also, a thing to note is that these aren't truly random numbers. In theory, you could actually figure out how they're being generated, because I think they're based on like your computer's clock or something. But anyway, I digress. So we're generating a random number, and I actually want to do this a set amount of times. So I'm going to show you a for loop. Actually, no, I'm not going to. Well, yeah, for loop is another form of flow control. So for I in we're going to run this 100 times. It's going to do this, and it's going to execute all the code that's nested, much like the else or while loop. In fact, a while loop is just another form of an int, or sorry, or is it the other way around? I think a for loop is a type of while loop, but I'll show you exactly how that works. So it's going to do this. So basically what it's saying is, I is a number, or is a variable you're declaring on the fly. So you're saying for every number in 100, so I could call this for number in 100. This may be incorrect. Let me find out real quick. It's not iterable. Oh yeah. So you want to use something called range. And this is the reason I really didn't want to do it this way. Int is, I think I can do it like this. Sorry, Python for loops are a little bit different than, yeah, I know you'd want to use a while loop for this, but I'll just show you the for loop anyway, so how it works. So, you want to get a range again, range 100, or 0 to 100. So, if I'm correct about what I'm saying, this should run 100 times, 99 times. Or no, actually this would be 100 times. From 0 to 99 is actually 100. Because remember, it runs from, but up to and not including. Let's see if this works. It does not work. For number in range, wow, I cannot believe I don't know how to use a for loop in Python. It's a little embarrassing, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. So, Python for loop. Generally in another language it's actually a little bit simpler. Okay, so let's not use a for loop just yet. In Python it's a little more helpful for using it in iterating through lists and stuff like that, which is stuff we haven't gone over. So we'll stick with the while loop. Yeah, which will make it a lot simpler. So while I is less than 100, we'll do this, and then at the end of every single run we'll increase I equals I plus 1. Whoops. So we're doing this. So as long as I is less than 100, and we're declaring I as a variable that we're declaring right now, we're going to do this, and then we're going to increment I. So I starts at 0, then it goes I plus 1 is 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, 5, 5, and then it reaches 100, and this is no longer true, and it stops. So declare your I equals to 0. Now run it. Alright, cool. So this just ran through 100 times and gave us 100 different numbers every time it ran through this. So what did we get here? Did we get any tens? We did not get any tens. We got ones, no zeros, and the highest number we got was 9. So that means that this random range, again, we're just verifying something here from earlier. So a little bit of a digression here, but hopefully it helps you. So what happens if we do this up to 11? If I'm correct, that means it goes up to 11, but not including 11. So that means it goes from 1 to 10. So we should see plenty of 10s, 9s, 1s, 4s, 5s, everything. And we do. So we just verified that what we were doing earlier is correct, which is cool, because it's what we were trying to do. So I don't need this anymore. We're just using it to test it. Hopefully introduce for loop, but we'll do that later on. Alright, cool. So if I run this again, whoops, what's my, oh, okay. So I left a space here. Guess equals your secret number. 1, incorrect. 2, 3, no, 4, 5, 6, oh, it's going to be 7. Correct. If I run this again, it's not going to be 7. If I try to, well, it may be, who knows. Let's see, 7. Oh, Jesus Christ. 7 is incorrect because it's a new number. So what is it? I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 5. So every time you run this game, it's actually going to give you a brand new. Hold on one sec. It's going to give you a brand new number, so it's not ever the same. You don't even know it yourself, so you can't cheat. Alrighty, cool. So we went over a couple of things here, and I think I covered everything I wanted to, which was flow control. So we have the while loop, which will execute as long as this, whatever you tell it, is true. Even though we're saying that 1 is equal to false, that's the statement that's true. So if you haven't 1, it'll do it. But if you have 1, then that's no longer true. It's going to stop. If statement will only execute if what you're telling it to compare is true, and it will do so once. Else if will check if the first one wasn't true, it'll go on to check the next thing you tell it to. And else will run anything else. If none of the above were true, basically, it'll result to be true. And you can nest these statements. So here I have the while statement with an if and an else, and this if happens to have an if, elif, and an else inside of it. Nesting can get a little bit confusing, but hopefully you can experiment with this. A good test to see if you understand these principles would be to write one that asks you for a particular letter, and then you can compare strings. If you can write something like that, that means you understand the concept, both from this video and the previous one. And if you have any questions, as usual, you can just write us in the comments or visit the page, which is thegamedevhub.com. And thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you soon.